Welcome to Kit Katastrophe. My name is Kit, and today we'll be taking a look at Transformers War for Cybertron Siege Deluxe Class Autobot SIXGUN. This figure was released in 2019 as part of Wave 2 Deluxe Assortment. SIXGUN's only other official physical figure didn't have a single unified alternate mode, instead opting to being a sort of weapon pack for Metroplex. However, since this SIXGUN has come out roughly 5 years since the last time we got a Metroplex, it's kind of imperative for him to have his own alternate mode. This is what is described as a Cybertronian tank, but obviously this is some sort of aircraft or spacecraft akin to a fighter jet. The color scheme is fairly monochrome, consisting of just white, red, and occasional grayish-black accents, making the otherwise slapdash nature of this design pass off as cohesive. Otherwise, this vehicle mode is somewhat problematic. For starters, there was no attempt to hide the robot mode hands whatsoever, much akin to COG, and the structural stability of the alternate mode is something of a joke. The topmost section, by which I mean the white bits, will sometimes be prone to detaching from the main fuselage, and the left wing especially is happy enough to pop off on its own. Other issues I have with this mode are relatively minor, such as the huge undercube nullifying any semblance of aerodynamics, as well as the 4 red gun barrels sticking out the front, which are a bitch to line up with each other. I figured this time around I'd cover the accessories and various weapon combinations before the robot mode for simplicity's sake. Basically, all you have to do is pull apart everything until you're left with 5 different kinds of weapons. First, we have the MTX M2 anti-gravity cannons, formed from SIXGUN's legs. These are an extremely large pair of handheld cannons, though the barrels themselves seem a little withered. Still, they feature some nice black and silver accents, which help make these look like proper multi-component weapons. Next is the MTX S2A guided missile launcher, formed from the lower torso and hips. This is the hardest weapon to explain, considering I'm not even sure how this thing is supposed to work. The MTX-50 dual-flank boost launcher, formed from the cockpit of the jet, looks like more of a shield than anything else, although it features 2 rows of sculpted missiles ready to fire. The MTX-LR ion pulse blasters are made from SIXGUN's arms and resemble rifles. Finally, SIXGUN comes with 2 W5 gyro blasters, which are identical to the one that came with Sideswipe. Overall, the weapons section is nice and varied, which means anyone more creative than myself will have a blast combining these weapons in various configurations. That's not to say that the instructions don't have their own suggestions. First is the defensive loadout, which is just piling on all of the SIXGUN parts onto an unsuspecting deluxe class figure's back. Unsurprisingly, this makes whoever's providing the firepower extremely back-heavy. For the record, the gyro blasters are supposed to fit in the anti-gravity cannon barrels, but mine don't! Yay. The offensive loadout is far more well-balanced. Pun intended. However, it feels like the instructions switched up the names on these 2 configurations. The defensive loadout seems to prefer forward firepower, while the offensive loadout ends up giving the recipient a giant shield. Food for thought. Dread it. Run from it. Destiny arrives all the same. Or should I say, the high-precision launcher gauntlet does. It only requires 2 components in order to make a crude approximation of a hand, but it does feature a wrist swivel and posable fingers and thumbs. This is the best approximation of a snap that I could make. Alright, let's get SIXGUN back into vehicle mode so we can pull him apart once again. Well, in actuality, we just need to pull apart the top half of the vehicle mode, as the legs and waist actually transform a bit, much in the same way as COG did. Be careful, however, as the connection of the thighs to the hips is shoddy at best on my copy. From there, the cockpit section does a very satisfying clamp down to form the torso, and some pegs flip accordingly to accommodate the arms. Put the gyro blasters anywhere you feel like, and flip down the cockpit to reveal the head. The robot mode definitely looks like SIXGUN. I'm still trying to decide if I like it or not. Frankly, in most areas, he looks absolutely weedy and spindly, especially in the arms and thighs, while the torso and shins are muscular and strong-looking. The juxtaposition of these 2 design choices don't particularly work for my tastes. The articulation also suffers in this mode, and while I'll go into this in more detail later, the arms are stuck moving at 30-degree increments and the elbows seem to hate any angle that isn't a multiple of 45, which makes him look extremely awkward in most poses. Like I mentioned in Transformation, the legs are prone to falling off at the thigh, and for some reason my copy seems to be somewhat back-heavy despite the presence of solid heels. The biggest saving grace of this robot mode is the head sculpt, which looks impeccable. The red helmet, blue visor, and the white mouthplate make SIXGUN look just generic enough to be a drone if that suits you. Or he could be an individual, and that suits me. SIXGUN features 2 guns that can detach from his arms and be held in his hands. They're not called out anywhere in the instructions, and they don't have a name, so make of that what you will. Now, Siege SIXGUN's posability is actually very nice, but it features many limitations and odd choices and just poor tolerances that really hamper my experience with this figure. He has a simple 360-degree rotation at the neck, but it can't go up or down, it just left or right. At the shoulder, they move at 30-degree increments. It's not a ratchet or anything, it's just the nature of the peg and port. The peg is circular, and the port is hexagonal. So that means 1, 2, 3 to go straight forward, which kind of feels a little limiting. If it was a simple circular port, I feel like it would have been a bit better. But then again, maybe they chose this because a circular port might, be looser or something. I don't know. I'm not a toy engineer. They go outwards on a hinge connected here in the main shoulder, and they go out that far before they start hitting him in the head, which is pretty decent, actually. He has a bicep swivel, but you wouldn't know that because these guns get in the way. If we use his elbow joint, you'll see that there's a peg from this gun that goes into this little void in his arm, but if we take that out, you can use it. Or you could, use it when his arm is bent. Now, speaking of the elbow is similarly quite stiff to the shoulder. It seems to only have 2 main resting points, all the way forward at a 90 degrees, and something around 45 degrees before it snaps back down. There's not a lot of play here. You could almost get it slightly bent, but it's not worth it for me. And there's one issue that I wanted to talk about a little later, but I might as well talk about it now because it happened. These thigh connections are so loose. They're so loose. And they're really frustrating because no matter what I try to do, at least one of these things falls off at any given moment. And it just makes me not want to pick this thing up at all. Maybe this is why these are hexagonal up here. But that begs the question, why aren't these hexagonal? Oh, that's right, they're meant to be 5mm ports to put weapon effect parts inside. Like fire drives, those are 5mm compatible. Blowpipes as well. He has a waist swivel that goes all the way around. It might bump into these tabs back here, but it's nothing too major or risky. He has a universal joint at the hips that go forward and backward all the way, and they go outward pretty far, which is impressive. The thighs, since they're just a 5mm rotation, they go all the way around, and he only has a 90-degree bend at the knee, which is a little disappointing considering his brother Cog can do the full 180 curl. So, shame on you, SIXGUN. Why can't you be more like your brother? At the ankle, as you see, he has a toe joint which goes all the way up and a little bit backwards for gun mode, which could in theory be useful, but these parts just feel a little flimsy and loose. And of course he has a very impressive ankle tilt, which means if you so desired, you could put him into some very wide-legged stances. So, SIXGUN, he's alright, but those thighs make me want to throw him across a room. Your mileage may vary, but yeah, it's not that good. I'll be upfront about this. SIXGUN is the weakest of the 3 weaponizer molds released so far. He may have a more coherent alternate mode than Cog, But Cog and especially Brunt are better overall experiences who don't have such hair-pullingly frustrating tolerances, strange proportions, and stunted articulation. If you want to complete the set or get a companion piece for Metroplex, that's fine, and the sheer amount of accessories he can become has potential for nifty and creative weapon loadouts and other creations, but at the end of the day, SIXGUN is just frustrating and mediocre. This has been Kit Katastrophe. Transform and roll out.